Well, a very good morning to all of you. In our art lecture, we talked about Aristotle's famous definition of tragedy, in which we understood that tragedy is an imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude in the language embellished with each kind of artistic ornament, the several kinds being found in separate parts of the play, in the form of action, not of narrative, through pity and fear, effecting the proper purgation, catharsis of these and similar emotions. So we understood that in this definition, Aristotle talks about the object, medium, and manner of imitation, and also he refers to the function of imitation. And tragedy is an imitation of the serious action in human life. And we also understood how the dramatist has to be selective in his approach, in a choice of events from human life. At the same time, we talked about the language and the what we call form. The form should be always dramatic, that should be presented on the stage. And further, we understood the ultimate aim of the tragedy should be the purification of heart. In this part of my lecture, I shall talk about the six formative elements of tragedy as discussed by Aristotle in his Poetics. So first we talked about tragedy. Now we shall go ahead with the formative elements of tragedy. What forms tragedy? So after discussing the definition of tragedy, Aristotle talks about various important parts of tragedy. According to him, tragedy can be divided into six constituent parts, and these constituent parts are plot, character, thought, diction, song, and spectacle. We shall talk about these elements one by one. So we are talking about the six formative elements of tragedy as discussed by Aristotle in his famous work on the theory of poetry, the Poetics. Poetry stands for literature. In those days, the word poetry was used to refer to literature in general. The term poetry came into use for referring to poems in the 20th century. Before that, the term poetry was the general umbrella term to refer to all kinds of literature. Okay. So Aristotle argues that among the six formative elements, the plot is the most important element. We talked about the six formative elements, and among these elements, plot is the most important. So we are talking about Aristotle's argument, Aristotle's views with reference to his work, the Poetics. As I said, the plot is the most important part of tragedy. And now we should know, of course, we have talked about the concept, the term plot in our discussion to the of literary terms. Now, what is plot? The plot is the logical arrangement or organization of events or incidents. So the plot means the arrangement of the incidents or events. And we are familiar with the division of plot. If you are not, please visit literary terms and concept discussed in your Canvas page. They are posted over there. So the plot is divided into five parts, namely what we call exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and denouement. And these are the different parts, of course, of the plot, the different stages, I can say. But when we talk about the structure of drama has again, the drama can be divided into five acts. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, Act 5, like this. Modern drama can be of smaller than, it can be of one act, two acts, three acts. For example, the Cherry Orchard is of four acts. Or there can be some plays which consist of only three acts. So the modern drama has brought changes in this division, but the stages of the development of plot remain the same. So, for example, if you have read The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare, if you have studied that, so The Merchant of Venice is divided into five acts. There are five acts, and each act can further be divided into several scenes. So within the act itself, there can be scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, etc. So, okay, so the dramatist's main skill lies in dividing the plot into acts and scenes. A systematic arrangement of these incidents. No, what is the plot? It is the systematic arrangement of the incidents, the logical organization of the events and actions. And arrangement can be made into different acts and scenes, and it is the dramatist's skill to decide in which act what should happen. Okay, generally the exposition occurs in the first act, and in act second, act third, we can have rising action and other elements or other stages of the development of the plot. So we should not correlate acts and stages of the plot. Means you should not think that in Act 1 there is only exposition. Act 1 may contain exposition. Further, it can have the rising action as well. Okay, so that is a different thing. So the structure of the plot we have talked about in detail while referring to the term, the plot, in the discussion of literary terms. So the skill of the dramatist is important in this particular division of the plot into acts and scenes, in such a way that they may produce the maximum scenic effect in a natural development. So we should understand that Aristotle gives more importance to the plot because he thinks that the plot is the underlying principle of tragedy. It is the underlying principle, just like your langue and parole. Langue is the underlying structure of language, the rules, the competence that we have, the knowledge of language. Similarly, the plot is the underlying principle of tragedy. Okay, so we understood that by plot he means the arrangement of incidents. Further, these incidents mean action. And we have come to know through the definition that tragedy is an imitation of actions. These actions can be internal or external. Internal means whatever is happening in the mind of the character. Okay, his thinking, his internal conflict can become the action for an imitation. Or it can be external, means his conflict with the external world. So this action can be internal and external. So we say that by internal and external, we mean that tragedy imitates the mental processes of the dramatic persona. Okay, so tragedy could be written without a character, but without not without a plot. That we need to understand. So when Aristotle was asked once whether we can have a tragedy without plot, he said we cannot have a tragedy without a plot. You can have a tragedy without character. You should understand it with reference to the structure of language. You cannot have a sentence without verb. So plot is the core element. So of course this is a kind of overstatement on plot, Aristotle's overstatement, but he accepts that without action there cannot be tragedy. Plot is an arrangement of actions, incidents. And how can you imagine a tragedy without actions? And the plot contains beginning, a middle, and an end. Now, what is the beginning? Beginning is what is not posterior to another thing. Means we don't understand what is going to happen next. Well, the middle needs to have something happen before, so that it should have some beginning and something to happen after it. So something happens before the middle and something should happen after it. And after the end, there is nothing else. This is how he understands or he explains the concept of beginning, a middle, and end. A plot contains a beginning, a middle, and an end. Okay, so this is how we understand the concept of plot.